Welcome in to this week's edition of MISL Weekly. My name's Nicholas Murray, very glad you can join us, and I'm pleased to be joined by Chris Economides. Chris, welcome in.
As always, a pleasure, my friend.
Now, hopefully you had a good weekend. I had a long weekend down in Bradenton, Florida, for the at IMG Academy for the Super Y League North American Finals. I know you joined us down there for a couple of days. Pretty fun. Pretty entertaining stuff out there with the youth soccer and some of the young players we got to see. How did you enjoy your experience down there?
It's always a lot of fun going back, during this time frame to see a lot of familiar faces through the USL years. It's always great to be around kids, and that sort of environment brings back a lot of memories when I had my own kids with youth hockey tournaments. So I was in my element back there. I was field marshaling, and I'm happy to say that there were no incidents whatsoever on the fields that I was patrolling.
Well, you were a lucky one then.
Yeah, and actually I had some nice conversations with some of the referees. They happened to be from upstate New York, so we had a little reminiscing there, but it was actually a very fun weekend.
Now, while we were down there this weekend, we were obviously keeping an eye on the two games that were going on in the MISL. This is kind of the last light weekend as far as schedule is concerned before the new year, but that left the window open on Saturday night for everyone to watch the game of the weekend, and arguably one of the games, what probably will at the end of it be one of the games of the season, with a tremendous battle between Baltimore and Milwaukee at the US Cellular Arena. Great home opener for the Wave, great comeback, and just a terrific game between two very, very strong teams.
Yeah, I mean, as we've spoken about on the podcast and on the video broadcast also, that anytime that these two teams meet, it's going to be a battle, it's going to be a war. Obviously, long storied franchises. Both Milwaukee and Baltimore. Milwaukee went into Baltimore for their home opener, spoiled their opener, shut them out actually, and then I went way out on a limb and said that. I'd be shocked if Milwaukee shut out Baltimore again, and lo and behold, Baltimore scores in the first 15, 20 seconds of the game to go ahead. But again, great game. Danny Kelly, Keith Tozer, two of the best coaches in the sport. And the game lived up to its billing.
Certainly, and I mean a really big performance for the Wave by Carlos Munoz. He had the goal in the first half for them, but when they were down 10-2, he got the goal that really sparked the comeback, scored from 3-point range, and that everything just seemed to start to snowball in the Wave's favor at that point, because then you get the penalty shot with Manzalo, I think it was, bringing down Oliveira in the penalty area. Then you get another great 3-point goal by Judson McKinney, who's a kid that I'm really happy for him getting that goal, his first goal for the Wave after playing for Chicago, and really having his season come to a very premature end last year with a broken arm while playing for the Soul. Tremendous for him to get his name on the score sheet. And then the final goal of the game, the winner for Munoz with 20 seconds to go. A little bit of controversy around it. There are certainly Milwaukee fans saying excellent no call. Baltimore fans saying, how did you not call the foul? What was your perception of it?
Well, first of all, you got to give both teams credit. You got to give Milwaukee credit. They have a way where even they were down by 6 points in the last 2.5 minutes in Kansas City and came back and won in overtime. Same thing here. They're down by 8 points late in the third quarter. They come back. That's a credit to Keith Tozer and his coaching abilities. It's a credit, that they've gotten, I think, younger as a team.
Definitely.
Henceforth, it's going to give them more juice into the game. Now, I'm going to be very brutally honest here, as I always try and be. I thought that last play should have been called the foul. I'm not second guessing the referee. We're gonna always back up our referees. It's a judgment call. But I believe that in that instance, with 20 seconds left, and I know that you differ on this, and I'm waiting for your opinion. But again, you know what? You can look at it a whole host of different ways. Baltimore can gripe that that they didn't get the call, but they put themselves in a position where it shouldn't even come down to that.
True.
Milwaukee is going to say, it was a 50-50 ball. I think the safe call there is to call a foul and let the game go on that way. But hey, you know what? Hats off to Milwaukee. Hats off to Munoz. He went in there. He made Daru pay for his, being the stronger of the two there. He finished it, and Milwaukee won the game.
See, like you said, I actually differ from you on this. I thought it was a good no call. I thought it was a good shoulder-to-shoulder challenge by Munoz. I think, honestly, Daru was somewhat looking for a call because it felt to me like he'd been caught out of position a little bit. Munoz had the inside track on him. He gets a good shoulder charge in, gets possession, and Daru and the Blast are waiting for a call while Munoz is putting the ball in the back of the net. I thought it was a good no call, thought it was a very good goal, and there is always going to be tension between these two teams. There's always going to be players trying to look to find an edge. I think Daru was probably looking for a call, hoping the referee was going to bail him out there when Munoz won the ball fair and square.
I can be very easily swayed, Nicholas. You know what? Again, I think I think how the game ended in terms of what the final score was, and and the dramatic ending of the game is exactly what we expect from these two teams.
Yeah.
So you know what? Again, we're going to stand behind our referees. They do a tremendous job. They have a thankless job.
Very thankless job.
They're always going to be wrong in somebody's eyes, and they're always going to be right in somebody else's eyes. So I thought it was a well refereed game, and you know what? If we could bottle and sell that type of game, I think we'd all be much further ahead.
Well, I think we've had quite a few of games like that so far this season, and the previous night we didn't get quite as thrilling a contest, but we did get a significant moment for the MISL and a significant moment for Josh Rife, a former Milwaukee player, now the Rochester Lancers coach, earns his first victory as in charge of the Rochester Lancers against the Pennsylvania Roar, and just a big moment for him and an important win at the same time for the Lancers to get that first win of the season and try and get their year headed in a positive direction.
Well, first off, congratulations to Josh. Been doing this for the past 20 years. He truly is one of the class people. He's been part of USL Pro now for many years in Charlotte. This past year, VSI. He's been part of indoor for the longest time. Good things happen to good people, and Josh is one of the good people in the sport. Having said that, the Lancers needed to have that win. You're 0-3. You're sort of snowballing in the wrong direction. A really hard weekend against the Syracuse Silver Knights, losing 2 games to their arch rivals. It was sort of a must-win from their perspective. They came out. I think the addition of Mauricio Salas back into the lineup, paid immediate dividends. I think they're a whole different team. I think we started to see remnants of the old Doug Miller, or the Doug Miller of last year. He had a whole host of chances. He didn't quite finish. I think he's going to snap that coming up this weekend. So again, Pat Hannigan had a solid performance. These are the guys that need to step up to the plate for the Lancers. When it's crunch time, you need to go to your marquee players. And those 3 guys stepped up last week.
It did feel like a little bit of a regression from the previous week for the Roar. We said praised them last week for their ability, stayed out of the penalty box, kept the game competitive. Well, unfortunately, the old habits kind of snuck back into this when they had a couple of penalties for too many men on the floor, and Rochester made them pay on that. Rochester also made them pay. A guy that really stepped up, I thought, was Gary Boughton. Got a very nice opening goal, and then very well taken short-handed goal, punishing Pennsylvania for a slack power play in the I believe it was in the third quarter. So Boughton is one of the guys that I was thinking, if he can stay injury-free, he's a guy that Rochester needs production, like secondary scoring production out of this year, if they're going to get back to the playoffs as they did 2 seasons ago.
Yeah, Boughton's got to step up. Players like Elliot Fauski, who's a very popular player there.
Another one, Juninho, really had his first, what looked like his first really positive game where he was influencing the play and being able to kind of act as that playmaker that I think the Lancers hope that he will be.
Juninho's a very crafty player. I had Juninho in Rochester for the Rhinos back in the mid-2000s, and obviously, a Brazilian player, very, very skilled, quality person. I think he's going to be a nice addition. Those people have to step up to the forefront. A kid like Joey Tavernisi, who's come in there and he's done a good job, been scoring some goals from a secondary perspective for the Lancers. A guy like Steven Basso, who was a highly sought-after player last year that the Lancers wanted to re-sign and did re-sign. So I think the pieces of the puzzle are there. I think it's their third coach in 3 years. There's an acclimation process there where they have to get acclimated to Josh's persona and his playing style and his coaching style. But again, I think the pieces of the puzzle could be there for the Lancers.
And there's another piece of the puzzle that was added just yesterday that we'll talk about in part two of the show. Before that, we're going to talk about Josh Rife's first victory and the Milwaukee Wave's dramatic comeback with Milwaukee Wave head coach Keith Tozer. That interview will be coming up just after this break. Well, we're very pleased to be joined now by the head coach of the Milwaukee Wave, Keith Tozer. Keith, thanks so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, and happy holidays to everybody.
Well, thank you, Keith. I appreciate that. And first of all, congratulations on the win on Saturday night. I mean, for you guys to come out and win in that fashion in your home opener, that's got to have been a huge buzz for you and the team in the locker room after the game.
Well, it was a big confidence builder, that's for sure. I mean, as we know, Baltimore's the defending champs and have a very good team again this year. And they actually came in and they dropped back against us, which was really the first time that Baltimore's really done that. It took us a little bit of time to adjust to it. We didn't get our legs going. We were a little lethargic. But then the three-pointer from Juddy and Carlos kind of got us back into the game. And we were fortunate enough to be able to pull it out in the last 20 seconds.
I mean, it was a really big game for Carlos. I think he's a guy that you brought in this offseason, and for him to come out, put up a 7-point night in the way that he did, and then to grab the winning goal with 20 seconds to go has got to be a really nice thing for him as he gets acclimated into the Wave.
You said it perfectly, and I was extremely happy for him because when I brought him in, I knew he was a great goal scorer. The defensive part of the game was an issue that I thought he really needed to shore up, and so far he's done a really good job at that. But, it's great to have that player or a couple players that outside tactics, they can break things down on their own, and that's what Carlos can do. So
you've made two big comebacks already this season, one against Missouri in your opener, another against Baltimore this past Saturday. It feels as though this team has maybe a little more explosiveness to it than last year's did. Is that why you brought in guys, some younger guys such as Carlos, to fill out the roster this season?
Well, we did, and we have 7 new players, and we haven't really talked about that openly in the media, but 7 new players is a lot, and 6 of them are rookies. The 7th is Victor Queiroz. So, with Juddy McKinney, Carlos Munoz, J.C. Banks, Tony Walls, Philip Surprise, with these young guys, they just added a lot of vitality. And the good thing about it, Nicholas, is they're good soccer players. They're technically sound. They understand concepts. It's probably one of the best group of young players that I've brought in many, many years. And it kind of like fit on the other hand, so the gloves kind of fit real good because they fit really well in with the veterans. So I'm extremely excited about the team. Not really happy about having to come back from being down, 15-8 and 21-15 against KC, and then of course 10-2 against Baltimore. 2 are very good teams. You're not going to do that all the time, so we got to make sure we shore up, especially at the beginning part of the game. But so far, so good.
one of your former players, Josh Rife, he's now the coach with the Rochester Lancers, and he was able to earn his first win this past Friday night. Have you talked to him since then? And what's it like seeing Josh move from the playing field, playing for you, to moving behind the bench and starting his career in that part of the game?
Well, I'm always happy that when one of my players moves on, and I call it getting to the dark side, so they really find out what coaching's all about. But, I initially had recommended Josh for the job. I'm extremely happy that he took it. I've been calling him and texting him and vice versa, and I text him after the game, congratulations on your first victory. Prior to that, I told him to stay the course. He's a great guy, great player. We learned a lot in Philly. Hopefully learn some here in Milwaukee. I think Rochester will be good the more they get used to him, and vice versa. So I'm extremely proud that Josh Rife is now behind the bench at the Lancers.
We've seen Josh as a player. We know that the way he approached the game, very calm, very smart player. Are those the sorts of attributes that are going to make him a successful coach in the long run in the MISL?
Well, I think being a very good player, I think helps. I think players will respect him even before they know what kind of coach he's going to be because of his ability to play in the field. I think obviously when you play in the field at a very high level, you look at the game a little bit differently than some other people maybe who haven't played at all. So I think that really helps him out a lot. He's always been kind of a student of the game. Talking to him after matches or after practices, giving his comments and, his kind of opinion on that. I think he started preparing himself for this a little bit a while ago. I think it's going to be great. He's a guy that's loyal, hard worker, and he's trustworthy. And I think he's going to do a great job for Rochester.
Well, it'll be interesting to see how you guys match up when the Lancers and the Wave meet a little bit later this season. But before that, this Friday night, you have another big game against the Comets. It was a thriller last time around. I'm sure you're hoping to not see quite as many goals this time. But what are the things that the Comets are going to challenge you with? And because they seem very explosive this season.
Well, I think their physicality is the first thing that you have to look at the Comets. They have a lot of guys that have a lot of speed. Take Brian Harris coming out of the back, a ton of speed and can go forward and hit the ball well. You got Lucas Rodriguez, who's got great speed also and can move around. You got St. Louis up top, who's a strong player. So, their physicality is extremely great on that team. And when you add your Assaporters and your Gibsons and your Waltmans and your Alvarezes, they're a very tough team. They're extremely tough at home. They're explosive, and it's something that both in Game 1 of the semifinals last year and our opener this year, we get behind the eight ball, and they run and gun, and it's difficult. So we got to come in and play smart and play extremely well to try to beat them 2 times in a row.
It feels as though the rivalry between the two teams it kind of tipped over a little bit and kind of became more fully fledged after last year's playoff series. Does it feel that way now, especially with the way that you guys were able to one-up them in the opener?
Well, we always seem like we're the hunted in this league, along with Baltimore. I think if you talk to Danny Kelly, he says the same thing, that every player individually that plays against his franchise, or I feel against Milwaukee, they have really, really good games. I feel that teams on a whole get to another level, and I think Kansas City is that. You add the fact that they're still looking for a championship, so that's the carrot or the log in the fire. You add a lot of quality players, which they surely have. You add a home team crowd, which they do, and you had a very good coach in Flatko, and that's a group of men that can beat anybody on any given night, and we fully understand that. So we're not scared of them. We do highly respect them, and we know it's going to be a battle coming Friday night.
Well, we're definitely excited to see the rematch of opening night's game. Keith, thanks so much for joining us, and best of luck on Friday.
No, thanks, Nicholas. There's so many people that send me emails or text messages or call me. They all listen to and watch the USL show and the MISL show. You guys do a great job. So I guess on behalf of the Milwaukee Wave, players, coaching staff, ownership and front office, we wish everybody else in the MISL and, of course, in the USL very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Well, thanks, Keith. We appreciate that, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, it was obviously interesting to talk to Keith Tozer about the comeback victory, and this Friday night, Milwaukee returns to the scene of its first big comeback of the season as they visit the Missouri Comets again at the Independence Events Center, 8:35 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:35 p.m. Central, and this is going to be a heck of a game because Missouri, they were a little bit peeved after the last meeting. They thought that there was a 3-point goal that maybe should have been called as a 2-point goal. It wasn't at that point in time. There was no review system for 3-point goals in the regular season. That, after a Board of Governors meeting last week, changed. So now there is a 3-point goal review system in place for the rematch. How badly do the Comets want this game?
Well, let me go back to Keith first. I think Keith, I've known Keith for the past 20-something years. He was my first coach and my first endeavor in pro soccer with the old Kansas City Attack. Keith moved with the franchise from Atlanta. And I just can't say enough good things about Keith Tozer. He's been a class act. He's been an ambassador for the sport of indoor soccer. He's the national futsal team coach. Just an all-around good guy. He's a league guy. He's helped numerous up and aspiring new coaches and players throughout in the MISL. So I'm happy for Keith for the success that he's had. Now, for the Comets and Wave rivalry, I think that rivalry, to be honest with you, because these teams play each other much more than the Blast and the Wave do, is an even bigger rivalry. So, yeah, I mean, make no bones about it.
It's certainly
those
getting
two teams,
that way, isn't it?
Those two organizations, I'm not sure that they're sending each other Christmas cards, to be honest with you.
I think there's a healthy distaste, but there's also a healthy amount of respect
Absolutely.
between the two. But I think the biggest part of that, and the reason why this is now potentially has the potential to overtake the Blast Wave rivalry, is as you mentioned, the number of games that they play during the regular season. But I think the Comets win last year in the playoffs, that was a tipping point for them. That was a tipping point for that franchise to get past the Wave, to get into the championship series. And then you come back this year, opening game of the season, and you have this tremendous game, back and forth action. 23-21 it ends up in overtime with Ian Bennett scoring his 5th goal of the night. I'm guessing we probably won't see quite as many goals this weekend, but this is easily a game that you could see, as with the Wave and the Blast last week, either going down to the final minute or, as in the first meeting, going to overtime again. It should be absolutely tremendous entertainment.
Yeah, no, I think you hit it right on the head, Nicholas. I think, when the Comets beat the Wave in the playoffs last year, I think that was when they finally had arrived at that level.
Yeah.
They had always been, okay, well, it's the Wave and the Blast. Well, I think Missouri did get their foot in the door last year. So, you know what? They came of age. They're at that level. Not only from an on-the-field standpoint, off the field, they did a tremendous job there with great crowds at the Independence Event Center there. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a great game. If there's one, and believe me when I tell you, these teams circle these games on the calendar when the games come out. So this is Milwaukee's second trip into Missouri. Make no bones about it. Missouri wants to pay him back for that season opening loss. And it should be a heck of a game.
It should be a heck of a game, and it is a pretty significant game because you have Missouri sitting at 2-1. They can pull within half a game of Milwaukee in the standings should they take a victory. They've played one game fewer so far, but this would send Milwaukee to 4-1 at the quarter pole, as it were, and give Missouri a chance to win that game in hand, move to 4-1 themselves, and get themselves right into contention for top spots in the MISL. Now, the other team that's in the top spot in the MISL right now is the Syracuse Silver Knights, and they play on Friday night. They play host to the St. Louis Ambush. I think Syracuse, it'll be interesting to see, is Michelle Millward healthy again? Is he overcome his hamstring injury? And can they play with a little more pep, a little more vigor than they did in their last game against Pennsylvania? Because I think they're going to need to against an Ambush side that's certainly got a lot of energy and certainly has some decent attacking options.
This is also a very interesting game. Syracuse has played Pennsylvania twice and Rochester twice. I think they're finally going to get a taste now, of how they stack up against some of the other teams.
The path to 4-0 for Syracuse has certainly been a little bit simpler than for the Wave.
Well, you know what? But they all got to play the games. You know, they all
True.
even out. So, you know, Missouri's coming in. I'm sorry, St. Louis is coming in.
Yep.
This weekend. You know, they're on a tough 2-game swing into Rochester, into Syracuse, then into Rochester. So, very curious to see how Syracuse handles the ambush, and again, another interesting game to watch.
Now, the other game on Friday night is the Rochester Lancers. They also have a pair of games this weekend against the Baltimore Blast, also with 2 games this weekend. They play the Friday-Sunday. But this after that victory last weekend against the Raw, for the Lancers, this is the big litmus test. How far have they progressed since Baltimore handled them pretty easily in the opening game of the season? And how will new addition J.P. Rodriguez fit in to the Lancers' defense? I mean, Josh Rife knows J.P. They've played on championship teams in Milwaukee together. It's a well-known name. I think it's a really good addition to that back line.
Yeah, make no bones about it. He's going to help. But just as the Comets had to get over the hurdle of climbing Mount Milwaukee, it's the same thing here with Rochester and the Blast. You know, I don't think, you know, the Lancers psychologically and for their own real purpose can ever consider themselves real contenders until they beat Baltimore.
And you can probably say the same thing about Syracuse to a certain extent.
You know, so I think, you know, they're coming off a win. You know, bringing in J.P. Rodriguez is going to help. They're going in with a little bit more confidence. You know, Salas and Miller are playing. But again, you know, they have to be able to go in, and especially, you know, winning Baltimore would be huge for the Lancers, bring them back home on a high. But again, you know, they have to go in and beat these upper echelon teams.
On a personal note, it's very nice for me to see JP back in the league. He's a kid that I somewhat grew up with. When he was playing in high school, I covered him for the Tampa Tribune when he was in Land O'Lakes. So it's very nice to see him back in professional soccer and back playing for a Lancers team that I think he's going to have a lot of fun with that team. It really seems like he's got the sort of personality that's going to fit into that locker room and provide guys like Stephen Basso, Pedrinho, now in their second years, that little bit of extra guidance, that little bit of extra experience, show them the ropes so that they can continue to progress in this game.
Well, I mean, let's be honest here. You know, I think JP's going because of Josh.
True.
You know, teammates and, you know, good friends. You know, obviously now, you know, this is where, you know, Josh's inner circle are going to come into play here. And there may be other additions also because, you know, Josh is obviously well respected, a good man, and he's got a lot of contacts from his playing days. So, again, this is one of the benefits of having an ex-player, you know, be your head coach.
Now, Rochester returns home, as you mentioned, to face the St. Louis ambush on Saturday night. Now, depending on results on Friday, this could be a very important game because we're probably going to have... We've got the 4 playoff places available. If one of these teams manages to grab a victory, if they can pull off 2 wins over the course of the weekend, they're going to vault themselves right back into the contention for that 4th spot and see if they can use if you can get a 2-win weekend in this league, that can be a heck of a springboard for the next couple of weeks. It just gives you that confidence, gives you that boost. It definitely these 3 games with the 2 games in Syracuse and Baltimore and then the Saturday night game in Rochester certainly seem like they're going to be very important for both the Lancers and the ambush.
I'm going to put on my senior director / commissioner's hat on for a second. My major concern this weekend is the weather up there. By all accounts, you know, with that northeastern.
I saw a map today. Didn't tickle.
Well, no, I mean, you know, my son goes to school in Oswego, and they were on the Today Show this morning. They've gotten like 2.5 feet of snow up there. So obviously, anytime you get into, you know, that sort of weather, travel is a major concern. Now, St. Louis, you know, should be okay because, you know, Syracuse and Rochester are only
short
67.
little bus trip.
Short
along
little
I-90.
hop, skip, and a jump. You know, I'm concerned about Rochester, to be honest with you, because they got to travel back from Baltimore, get in at the wee hours of the morning after they game in Baltimore on Friday, and then turn around and face, you know, a St. Louis team. Now, to your original point in question, yeah, I mean, a couple of wins, from a St. Louis perspective, and they're right in the thick of things. A couple of wins from a Rochester perspective, and they're right in the thick of things. So obviously, as you mentioned earlier on, this is where the schedule heats up, a lot of games, and a lot of things could change overnight.
Yep. 4 games this weekend. Misspoke a moment ago. The Baltimore against Pennsylvania game next Friday night. So got confused looking at the schedule here. Can't quite read today. But those 4 games, all available on YouTube. Which is the one you're going to be paying closest attention to?
They're all interesting matches. As I mentioned earlier on, I think the Milwaukee Kansas City game is going to be a really special game, and I could be wrong here. Could turn out to be a dud where somebody blows somebody out, but I doubt it. I think that matchup, and then I'm really curious to see Rochester and St. Louis on Saturday night. With both, it'll be the second game, second night, the travel conditions. And just curious to see how those 2 games end up.
I obviously agree. I think Missouri-Milwaukee definitely the matchup of the weekend, but I'm also going to look at that Friday night game. You will be able to catch the first half of that before we start dividing attention all across the 3 games. But that's the Syracuse-St. Louis game. I thought Syracuse played well. But I think they can play better than they did in their last outing against Pennsylvania in front of their home crowd. Can they raise their level again, and can they continue this undefeated start to the season? It's a really great story what Tommy Tanner and the guys there are being able to do. How long can they make this last? That's a fascinating question for me.
The beauty of it, Nicholas, is that you can watch all 3 on YouTube. You can go back and forth. You can There's no worse channel surfer than me. Just ask my wife. And
make sure you jump into the chat room where I may or may not be there to answer questions and chat along with you as we watch all of the games.
I don't know about that, but maybe producer Seth can chat for me. I don't know.
We got to let us know. Would you like us to set Chris up with his own YouTube channel and username so he can chat alongside you guys?
Can't teach an old dog new tricks.
But players to watch this weekend, is there a player in particular you're looking at that's going to be key for one of these games?
Interesting. I didn't expect that question. I'm sort of banking on Dougie Miller coming out of his goal-scoring slump this weekend. If I know Dougie like I know Dougie, I think he's going to come out strong this weekend and have a couple of big games.
Did come awfully close. I think he hit the post a couple of times against Pennsylvania, so almost there.
Yeah.
For me, it's the new man for Rochester. It's JP Rodriguez. How does he fit in? How many minutes is he able to play over these first couple of games? And what kind of difference does he make at both ends of the floor? We know JP, very solid defender. Got a very good shot on him though as well. If you can get him on a power play, certainly has the ability to score from distance. So another 3-point threat for the Lancers there.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, he's obviously going into a brand new situation there. I'm sure that Josh wants to get him acclimated to a certain degree, although he probably throw him right into the fire. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see both those people.
Well, we hope you'll join us for all the action this Friday and Saturday night on YouTube. We check out Friday's weekend preview. We'll have a little bit of a breakdown on 3 of the weekend's games, and then join us early next week as we'll have the weekend recap up on YouTube as well. Until this time next week, though, for Chris, my name's Nicholas. Thanks for joining us. Bye for now.